Today on Classroom Dynamics.
One word, embrace. Embrace. I see educators who are, leaving the industry after decades because they say, I didn't get into this to be a human plagiarism detector. And I get where that's coming from. But part of why that is happening is because you haven't embraced the technology enough to even understand how you can work with it and how you can, when necessary, work around it. If you embrace it, then it's going to be that much easier for you. And you will even discover that there are new types of skills that we can be teaching as well, right? That AI is not just a dead end, even from the perspective of it being used to do the work. There's still a skill in how you use it to do the work.
Welcome to the place where ideas collide. Adam Todd's here to be your guide. For teachers and techies, tracing the spark. Classroom dynamics, where we leave our mark. Let's dive in deep, the future's bright. Innovation shines like morning light. Teachers and tech, hand in hand we go. Welcome to the Classroom Dynamics Show.
Classroom Dynamics is sponsored in part by Logitech Education, empowering student voice and creativity with innovative tools like the Logitech Reach Adjustable Content Camera and the Zone Learn headset designed specifically for student comfort and focus. Discover how Logitech is transforming classrooms at logitech.com/education. Welcome to Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we unlock the future of education. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Adam Todd, and today we're joined by Dr. Eli Fennell, the director of the Bachelor of Science in Cyberpsychology program and co-director of the Center for Institutional Scientific Research at Albizu University in Miami. Dr. Fennell is breaking new ground in AI for education, including his dissertation proofreader, a powerful tool now rolling out in the PsyD department designed to help dissertation chairs and students themselves polish their work with unprecedented precision. From pioneering cognitive approaches to large language models to launching AI initiatives on campus and in the city of Doral, Dr. Fennell is shaping the future of AI in higher education. Stay tuned as we dive into how these tools are transforming teaching, research, and student success. And it's all coming up next on Classroom Dynamics, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Classroom Dynamics is brought to you in part by Higher Ground Gear and the Vaulted Cell Phone Pouch, the smarter, faster way to create phone-free classrooms. Built with military-grade construction, RF shielding, and a high-decibel Velcro closure that stops distractions before they start, Vaulted keeps learning focused and secure. No locks, no end-of-the-day bottlenecks, just durable, easy-to-clean protection that gives students what they need most: attention, connection, and calm. Upgrade your school's approach to distraction-free learning with Vaulted at Higher Ground Gear. For more information, visit hggear.com today or contact us at info@hggear.com.
Behind every successful student is a teacher who feels supported. At Catapult Learning, we partner with educators through coaching, collaborative professional development, and classroom-proven tools. Our programs aren't just theory. They're actionable, relevant, and built to make your daily work easier and more effective. With 45 years of evidence-based success, Catapult provides the guidance and resources that help educators grow so students thrive. Catapult Learning, empowering teachers, inspiring futures. Learn more at catapultlearning.com.
Dr. Eli Fennell is the director of the Bachelor of Science in Cyberpsychology program and co-director of the Center for Institutional Scientific Research at Albizu University in Miami. He's also the AI expert behind his new dissertation proofreader, as well as a host of other innovative tools that are reshaping research and student success in higher education. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk about the development of your dissertation proofreader. It was the first I heard of it. So how did it come about? What could it be used for? And what are the benefits of actually using it?
Well, so how it came about is, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And among the many hats that I wear as a professor at Albizu University, I am a dissertation chair. So I have a number of students that I'm helping, with their own development of their own dissertations. I'm also a doctoral project coordinator. And as part of that, I actually supervise a large group of students' initial concept papers, which they then propose to the people that they want to have as their chairs. Sometimes that's me, sometimes that's other people in the department, which is the PsyD Clinical Psychology Doctoral Department. And also, I teach research methods in which, students are assigned, amongst other things, to propose, to break into groups and propose research. And so life of a professor is a busy life. And I also wear other hats at the university. And so, my view was we have long had certain tools built into things like word processors where we can check grammar and things like that. And now we're living in this age of large language models. Could I develop something that would essentially function as a proofreader that could do a series of initial passes through each version of the document, provide some feedback, and then I could review its feedback, decide what I liked, decide what I didn't like, decide what needed to be reworded. And, it occurred to me pretty quickly, of course, that in addition to being of use to me, this would also be of use to other professors in the department who also serve as dissertation chairs. And so I started out with developing this as a custom gym for ChatGPT. But I quickly hit there was a limit in the way that ChatGPT could handle this, which is it could only handle a small number of pages, basically 5 to 6, maybe 7 pages at a push, before it would either fail to render the document at all, or it would start hallucinating, meaning it would just start making up stuff that sounded plausible, but wasn't actually the document I was asking it to review. So then from there, I tested out Google Gemini, and I quickly discovered that not only could Gemini handle much longer documents, arbitrarily long. In fact, I've been able to handle documents with this that are over 100 pages, so I don't know the actual limit. But I was able to use it to program a variety of customizable features. For example, different types of issues that the proofreader would identify and highlight. It could highlight in different colors so that I'd know at a glance what specific types of issues students were having. It could allow me to edit the comments directly right there in the reviewer, and to export the comments and the highlights into a Word document to make it as easy as possible for me to be able to take these comments in a form where I could work with them directly and then provide them to the student as feedback. So philosophically, I designed this very much as a human in the loop thing to assist me, not to replace me, which it would not be able to do. Right. It's smart, but it's not as smart as I am. And I think it's always important to keep humans in the loop, keep humans as the final decider, and to have the human who is using these tools be an expert so that it knows when the thing is working correctly and when it's not.
I think that's one of the biggest issues right now is that human element. Like, where does that fit in? And, you're at that higher educational level, but even going all the way down to elementary school and in between, that I think is a teacher's or professor's, instructor's biggest concern. Like, how do I integrate me into that? How do I take my personality and what I need to know and teach the kids and infuse that into it so that it gives me what I want, right?
Right, exactly. And more recently, I've begun piloting a student-based version of this, which is a more lightweight version built around the idea that certain types of feedback, the students are not expert enough yet. So it only provides the type of feedback that they would be able to evaluate the accuracy of themselves, because it's extremely important that we maintain these human skills, the ability to communicate, that we not engage in excessive cognitive offloading. In fact, we know from the body of research that's been done on this that excessive cognitive offloading actually leads to the atrophying of critical cognitive skills, communication skills, critical thinking skills, all sorts of, relevant skills for research, for academics, for professional life. And ultimately, if you're outsourcing all the work to the machine, the question then becomes, what do we even need you for?
Right.
I didn't get into education, and I know this is something a lot of educators are struggling with. I didn't get into education to grade the work of an AI,
Yeah. When you think about teachers trying to incorporate that into their everyday, we're still at this infancy stage where I think teachers are just trying to pull and try and do and see what works, what doesn't work. It's almost like a guess and check throughout their day as to how they could use the AI, but to actually use it for assessment and for the kids, especially the students in your program and higher education programs, to use it as a self-assessment tool at that level already. That's exactly what they're going to start to do in the real world once they start to graduate and move into it anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's easy to fall into the doom and gloom trap, but there are so many possibilities here with students being able to actually use these things for methods of self-assessment, to be able to identify areas of weakness, get feedback, get corrections, and actually develop and grow and progress themselves. These tools used correctly can actually be a superpower, because there simply aren't, and even in an ideal world, there would never be enough educators, enough mentors to provide constant, on-demand, detailed, timely feedback and practice and tutoring and all of that for all the people out there in the world, formal students or just those who are students of things on their own, accord. To be able to actually take advantage of that. So there's a real superpower that can be unlocked here if these things are used correctly.
So how does psychology then play into those large language models to become that superhero and have that superpower?
Well, so I already alluded to the research on cognitive offloading, that you have to be aware of the risk of cognitive offloading with these systems, the temptation that students and even professionals may have to want to let this thing do the work for them. Mm-hmm. But also, in that regard, not all prompts, as they call them, are made equal. So that in and of itself is a skill that people can develop, that, you can become a better supervisor, a better instruction giver for the machine, and that in that regard, you are still doing something valuable. You are becoming the boss, in a sense, to an agent. And there are a variety of hard and soft skills that play into that. In terms of more, how does psychology feed into the development of these systems? I actually think that's an area where Silicon Valley has had a real weakness in the way they've approached things. These are often people whose expertise is machines, but they've become convinced, because they've produced something that can chat, that means that they understand the workings of the mind.
I was going to say they're missing the human element, right?
Right, exactly. But there are researchers, and I'm one of them, who are putting these technologies under the microscope, and we're finding that they very much do come up short on their own merits, but that, the application of psychological principles can actually improve the performance of these things, especially if that is baked into the development of the technology, but also at the point of the end user.
So how do you look at it with kids that are going to start to use it at such a very young age? Kids that are trying it on their own, because there are, let's face it, and let's do the other end of it where they're being instructed how to use it properly, ethically. How does that all then play into a role leading up all the way to where you're going to start to see them at their age and those levels of, education, and then of course beyond?
I'm torn here. Part of me is really looking forward to being able to someday teach the generation that has come up with AI. And part of me is very much dreading it, because I'm sure it's going to be a mixed bag. Things are changing so quickly, and everybody is trying so hard to figure out the best way to go about it. And there's a variety of approaches, and there's no standardization around this. So as you yourself alluded to, we have to start teaching them how to use it properly at a young age. We cannot take the hard prohibitionist approach. Prohibition is something that really rarely ever works, regardless of what you're trying to prohibit. And it's particularly not going to work when it's something that is available 24/7 on demand. But at the same time, obviously, there has to be a balance where, particularly at that young age when you are developing these skills, and in general, at any stage when you're just developing skills, we cannot let you engage in offloading these things to the machine and not developing these skills yourself. You need to develop them first, and then you can be a better steward, a better supervisor for the technology, recognize its limitations, find ways to improve it, identify where it's appropriate, where it's not appropriate, and identify and correct its mistakes. So this is definitely going to be a challenge. And I think I'm happy to see a move towards the banning of smartphones in public schools starting to emerge in the United States and elsewhere. I'm mostly familiar with the situation in the United States, but the early indication is that this is having a very positive effect. I also think that, sometimes with the early development of skills, just the technology needs to be kept out of it. If you need to teach math, teach them how to do the math, before you introduce them to the AI that can maybe do the math for them.
Right.
And they need to learn language skills, teach them the language. When they need to learn writing skills, teach them to write, build those foundational skills, and then they can make a better judgment as to when and how to use the technology. But you cannot let those critical periods pass by. And this is going to be a real challenge. And I think in many ways, we're seeing that it's going to require at times that we go old school with it.
Mm-hmm.
Require bringing back, pen and paper exams.
Right. Well, then, and that you'd sparked a question, psychologically speaking, let's go that route for a second, and developmentally speaking, what age would be a good age to start where, yes, obviously kindergarten and first grade, that's not going to be the case, but is fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, when you're getting into middle school, more of an appropriate time to introduce this? Or is there somewhere in between where you can start to introduce, because developmentally the brain is going to be different at, age, 5, 10, 15, 20. So where does that all fall into place so that it actually, you can hit it so that you can do the right thing?
Yeah, this is a big challenge. And I know it's what people want is some sort of simple answer there, but I know,
and there definitely isn't one, right?
There is no simple answer here. And we're going to have to learn about this as we go along in many ways. I think that in some forms, it should be something that should be starting to be introduced right away, because it is a technology that's going to be infused in everything ultimately. Language is I like to say it's like Promethean fire to be able to give language to a machine. You have to be careful not to get burned, but right. Used correctly, it is incredibly powerful. And we should start them on various aspects of that at the youngest age, but we have to try to find what is the age appropriate context at every age, and what are the tasks where they need to just develop those foundational skills themselves. For example, in basic mathematics, they need to understand, the basic at a young age, how to do in their heads and on paper, with pen and paper or pencil and paper, multiplication, addition, division, subtraction. We can't just let the calculators or the AIs do all that for them. They'll never develop those skills. And no, it doesn't matter that there's a calculator app in your pocket. If you don't understand basic mathematical skills, you won't even know the correct ways to use that technology in real life. So it's not going to be a simple answer, but I would say that we need to go gentler with it at a younger age. Introduce it slowly, introduce it very carefully at a younger age. And then maybe around 7th or 8th grade, then we can start to introduce it in a more, highly integrated form where they're using it all the time, but still making sure that we are not skipping those critical, skill developments along the way. So develop the skills, and you can use the technology to help them develop the skills, but not until they have developed those foundational skills in a particular area should they then be moving on to the stage of prompting the thing to do the work.
It's almost unfortunate that it's become a science experiment because AI is being built and expanded at such an exponential rate that it's so hard to keep up with it, and it is being integrated into their lives, and sometimes they recognize that it is and sometimes they don't. But yeah, it really has become a science experiment, and to see where that happy medium is going to be.
It is. And what's funny is some of the folks in Silicon Valley will actually talk about it openly and proudly as this sort of experiment that they have foisted upon society. And they just say, it's your job. You've got to keep up with it. Now, I'm not necessarily ever one to want to advocate for the way they do things in China, but I do actually see value in, for example, that the Chinese state actually can order the AI companies to turn their models off during exam periods. Now, I'm never one to necessarily advocate for that kind of thing. I personally wish that these companies would be ethical enough on their own to want to coordinate with educators, find out when the critical periods are, that access to these technologies should be restricted. But that's probably not going to happen. So the reality is we, on the education side of things, are constantly going to have to be working to keep ahead of this. And that means embracing them ourselves. And I see an unfortunate tendency with some educators to just want to sort of be Gandalf facing off at the Balrog, you shall not pass. But, Gandalf had to learn wizardry, right? Gandalf couldn't just stand there as some dude with a stick and hold the Balrog off. You have to actually learn about these tools yourself. Otherwise, how will you even know how to identify it, how to limit it, how to design lessons and curricula so that it's used properly and not used when it shouldn't be used, or how it shouldn't be used, and also start addressing that proactively. Look, we know, speaking of psychology, we know that when you just tell people, don't use this thing that could be potentially very useful, that's just going to make them want to use it more. That's like saying, don't get the cookie from the cookie jar. What you need to do is start teaching them at a very early age how to use it correctly, and also what it can and can't do.
Right.
Because I will tell you, I am always catching students, that are using it improperly. And the reason is they don't even know, right? They don't even know what its limitations are. They don't even know what it's good at and what it isn't good at. And so, and also, right, again, because we've not taught them how to properly use it, they don't even know how they should instruct it so that it would produce the best possible outputs. They just type in a sentence, it churns some stuff out, and they assume it's done it correctly.
So looking ahead, what do you see as the next big innovation in AI for higher education now? So we've talked about lower and mid a little bit, but how does that work for higher education? How do you even think psychology is going to play a role with that as these kids start to get older and you see that they're using it more or have had more experience with it?
I mean, I think that at the higher education level in particular, tutoring, AI tutoring is an area that is nascent, but I think it's just going to be the most important area over the next decade, because again, there would never, even in an ideal world, there would never be enough people to provide the constant on-demand personalized tutoring services that people in higher education need to really do their best, to learn the course material, to be prepared for those exams. And this is something I actually incorporate into my curricula, is how can you use these tools to, better learn these skills, better prepare for these exams on your own? But we're still very, very much in the early days of that. And there are a lot of issues to work out with the reliability of AI tutoring services. And so I think it's up to the individual educator at this point to test these tools, test these approaches on their own, and find out what works so that you can then make the students aware of what they have available to them for those purposes. Now, there's another side, that's the student
Right.
side. The other side, I think, in terms of artificial intelligence, is more on the administrative side of things, which is the ability to identify what students' needs are, what their areas of weakness are, potentially identify, maybe there's pathways within academia that would be better suited to them because, students are on this path at trying to figure out, particularly early in their college career, where do they want to be going with these things? And even if they know the broad area, what are the specializations that they are good for, that they have a passion for, and things like that.
That's so interesting. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to look at how AI changes the way we think, both negatively and positively. More with Dr. Fennell of Albizu University in Miami right after this. Attention educators, meet the Logitech Zone Learn, the classroom headset designed for learners and built for schools. Engineered for comfort and durability, the Zone Learn delivers crystal clear audio, helping students focus and fully engage during lessons, group projects, and online learning. Built to last, its modular design adapts to any classroom setting and ensures a reliable, distraction-free learning experience. With Zone Learn, your students can hear the difference, which helps boost learning. For more information, visit logitech.com/Zone Learn. Bullying affects every school, but together we can change the story. Box Out Bullying brings powerful bullying prevention education to life through engaging interactive theater that gets students thinking, participating, and learning in meaningful ways. Through dynamic school assemblies, classroom workshops, and training for educators and families, Box Out Bullying equips entire school communities with the tools to build empathy, confidence, and respect. Whether in person or online, these high-energy programs inspire students to be upstanders, not bystanders, and help create safer, more inclusive learning environments. Make your school a place where every student feels seen, supported, and valued. Box Out Bullying. Empower, include, respect. For more, visit boxoutbullying.com today. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. Today we're talking with Dr. Fennell of Albizu University in Miami, and we're talking all about AI and some of the work that he's doing there at the university. So let me ask you, studies in cognitive psychology and educational technology indicate that frequent use of AI for writing and research can alter metacognitive strategies, self-regulation skills, all of these things that we want to instill in kids. So based on your experience, how can educators balance that benefit of AI for productivity with fostering deep, independent learning for students all at the same time?
Well, so I've kind of alluded to some of this already. So I think the first thing is we need to move past the mentality of standing athwart the gate and just completely trying to hold it back. That's not a productive approach. It's not a realistic approach. Instead, we ourselves need to stay on the cutting edge of learning about these systems, learning about what's out there. I find myself frequently, ahead of my students, in fact, where I know more about it than they do. And that allows me to then steer them towards the best offerings out there. For example, towards tools that are meant to be supportive of their learning, more so than tools that are meant to do the job for them and replace their learning. I also incorporate into my curriculum the best strategies that they can use to use these tools in ways that are supportive, as well to assess their ability to actually use these tools. So that in and of itself becomes the development of a skill, right? Because as I said, not all prompts are made equal. Not all use of AI is made equal. I think also, I'm just encouraged, as I said, and I think this should continue, by trends to, minimize overuse of technology in the schools at the K to 12 levels. Students should have access only to the kind of technologies that can be, supervised and regulated by the educators at those levels. So that we can ensure that they are developing those skills. And we have to reconsider various aspects of how we teach things. In some cases, maybe we have to move away from just the idea of, here's an essay assignment, go home and write the essay assignment. If we know that they're just going to go home, they're going to prompt ChatGPT, and then they're going to turn something in and they've learned nothing, so maybe in some cases you got to bring back, pen and paper. Maybe in some cases you got to bring back oral presentations and incorporate elements of testing the student on the spot, to ensure that they actually demonstrate their learning. There are, in short, this is a multi-dimensional challenge. And I think also some of it will probably depend on the development of new systems that are not yet available to us. I fully expect that within the next decade, we will see tools that allow us to do a better job of monitoring when students are doing remote work. Are they actually writing that essay? What are they writing themselves? What's coming, from AI or other tools that are doing the work or assisting them? Grammarly, I think, is kind of on the leading edge of this, where they have a system built in that will actually track your writing, and it will track, what was done by you, what was done by the AI, what was copy pasted. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think eventually we will see reliable AI detector systems, or at least more reliable than the current systems, which I can say from experience are not really reliable at all.
Do you think that AI is going to help empower students moving forward down the line? How does that all work with, critical thinking skills, self-directed problem solving skills? How does AI now empower the student to be the student that we want them to be without the technology, but then help them, because obviously that's the world they're living in, and we're living in too now.
AI is an incredibly empowering tool. So we talked about earlier about my dissertation proofreader. And as this has developed, it has involved more and more programming. Now, I'm going to confess right now, I am, sort of I'm a very low level. I wouldn't even describe myself charitably as an intermediate coder. I did learn a little bit of coding over the years, but I wouldn't even describe myself as intermediate. But I'm able to recognize when it is doing what it should be doing and when it's not doing what it shouldn't be doing. And so it's serving as a superpower that is allowing me to go beyond my limits as a coder by being able to evaluate its coding suggestions instead of, having to work from a knowledge base I don't possess. And I think that in that regard, it is, as I said, it is a potential superpower. It has been predicted by some, and I believe this is true, that we will see within our lifetime, certainly maybe within the next decade or two, we will see the one-man billion-dollar company. We're going to see that. We're going to see somebody that just him and the AI tools, or her and the AI tools, they are going to have a billion-dollar company come out of that. So it is something that, if you master it, it can give you superpowers.
You know what? And it's true. And they can use those superpowers for a lot of good or a lot of evil. Hopefully good, more than good than the evil, right? How do you, now let me ask you this, with that in mind, do you think that teaching students higher order thinking skills like Hess complex thinking can actually aid in that prompting to get them to get to that point, so that they do have that ownership on that whole level that we're hoping that they get to one day?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I am very much of the school of thought that I think that one of the failings of modern education, at least certainly in the United States, I think the same probably applies in many other places, is that it has become about teaching students what to think. And that's the lowest level of teaching. That's the kind of teaching that would also be done in, just like a Sunday school, right? Here's what you think. Here's what you're supposed to think. And I think that what education should be much more focused on is twofold: teaching them how to think, and at the metacognitive level that you alluded to earlier, how to think about thinking and about how they think. And I think those are skills that we need to bring back the teaching of and start teaching that at a very early level. You mentioned one approach. There are a number of different approaches to this. I'm a big fan of some of the older approaches. I think the Socratic approach, for example, should make a comeback.
I like that one too. That's a really good one as well. You're right. Because it really does promote and push them into that space.
And not just that, but not only does it develop their thinking abilities, but it'll also help them to recognize what these technologies actually are, because that's something we haven't really talked about yet, but I think is really important for people to understand. Producing language is not thinking. A language model is like a weather model for language. Its job is to predict the next word, the next phrase, the next sentence, the next paragraph, based on what it has learned from the patterns of language that has been fed into it, which is basically, for a large language model, that's basically the entire internet. At least the entire public internet has been fed into them. And so they recognize patterns, sometimes very much to their detriment, that they can stick slavishly to patterns. I remember a story of a fellow who managed to hack a security key on Windows through Copilot by essentially just making several wrong guesses and then going, I give up. And essentially the thing recognized this as like the pattern of a guessing game, and it just gave him the password. Because that's how it would work in a guessing game, right? You would say guess, and I would make a guess. No, that's not it. I'd make another guess. Oh, that's not it. And then I go, I give up. And you would tell me the answer.
Right.
It's obviously not supposed to happen with security keys, but that's what a language model does, because that's what a language model is. It is, as an AI researcher from Google, who no longer works at Google, named Bendis, said, it is a stochastic parrot. It does not think. And that is easier to recognize if you have gained the ability to develop thinking skills and the metacognitive skills of how to think about thinking and about how to think.
And that's where the bias really comes into play, and really front and center too.
Right, exactly. Bias in AI as well as bias in human psychology. These are two interesting things that are colliding. On the one hand, the AIs themselves are biased in a lot of very negative ways, including all of our worst human biases. But also we have a cognitive bias that we tend to think instinctively that something that can talk must be intelligent, because that has always been the case through our history. Anything that could speak was another human being and was therefore intelligent. And that is no longer the case. We have captured that Promethean fire and we've given it to the machine, but sans everything else about our cognitive nature. It has nothing else about our cognitive nature other than that it can produce plausible outputs of language. But it's not, in the literal sense, it's not even really speaking in the same way a weather model is not producing weather.
That's a great analogy.
Modeling.
That's a great analogy. No, and I think a lot of teachers would understand that. That's a great way to look at it and think about it. It's hard when you really are trying to, and we've used this before on the show before, fly the plane as you're building it, because that's what we're doing. And we're trying to figure out what's the best next step. And again, it's almost like AI, where we're trying to predict. Well, we're trying to also predict what's going to be next. And we don't know, because new things come about every single day almost, and it gets infused into everything we're doing. And when it starts to filter down all the way down to elementary school level stuff, wow, that's where you really have to start to really think differently. And teachers need to know this. I think it's important to mention that if you're not keeping up with this, you're not dabbling a little bit, even experimenting on your own, you're going to fall behind, because you're not going to know what really is the thing that needs to be done next.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot less emphasis at this point needs to be put on the idea of trying to predict what's coming next in technology. The best minds in the world of technology cannot predict what's coming next. The parent company of Facebook is called Meta because Mark Zuckerberg, who founded a $1 billion company predicting the trend with social media, that's hundreds of billions of dollars now.
Yeah.
Thought that the next big thing was going to be virtual reality and the metaverse. And he was wildly wrong. And he has desperately tried to pivot his company. Now, obviously, in the corporate world, when you're trying to maintain a multi-billion-dollar company, you kind of have no choice but to make your best bet and let the chips fall where they lie. But in the world of education, I think we're past the point where we can pretend that we have a good sense for what's going to come next, even next year. So I think what we need to do is just, we need to keep up, it's just a reality. We need to keep up.
Right.
A lot of us in education like to do this on our own anyways, but anyone, any teachers, any educators out there who think that they can get away with any more just kind of like resting on your laurels. Hey, I went to college for this. I know what's what. No, if you haven't learned it, learn it. Keep learning it. Keep learning it. And you know what? That's great for your physical and cognitive health too. People who learn things every day have better mental health. They maintain their cognitive abilities for longer. They live longer. So take that as a task. Learn more about it. Use these things. Study these things. Take classes. Take continuing education classes or things like that. And just play around with it on your own. You have it at your fingertips. We live in an amazing age in that regard, that we can now use these tools from almost any device at almost any place. You could be using ChatGPT from the beach. It's a funny story. I remember when I was a kid, AT&T had these series of commercials where they were like, someday you'll send a fax from the beach and we'll be the company that brings it to you. They could not have predicted what you can now do from the side of a beach with the technology we have on hand.
You could literally be doing 3 things at the same time and emailing and texting and taking a picture and showing video. We talk about that a lot, where you have everything literally now in your pocket. You have almost like an office space in your pocket. You could do everything from your pocket now.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
And that can have a downside, right? If you forget to maintain a work-life balance, do pull your head away from the machine. But I think the ultimate point is not so much that you should be doing this all the time, but that the excuse can no longer be, lack of convenience.
Right. The accessibility is there for everyone to have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we'll wrap things up with Dr. Eli Fennell of Albizu University. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Looking to spark excitement in your classroom and save time? Head over to Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers. From engaging lesson plans to creative lab books and test prep tools, these resources are designed to inspire learning and take the planning stress off your plate. Highly Motivated, motivating teaching resources that engage and inspire. For more, search Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers today.
Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. We have about 2 minutes left. So let me ask you, as AI becomes more integrated into the classrooms across the board, and we're talking across the board, right, from elementary all the way up to higher education, what's one word of advice that you have for teachers, again, no matter what grade or subject that they may teach, and how they could then, of course, use it on their own with their work, but also with their kids?
One word: embrace. Embrace. I see educators who are, leaving the industry after decades because they say, I didn't get into this to be a human plagiarism detector. And I get where that's coming from. But part of why that is happening is because you haven't embraced the technology enough to even understand how you can work with it and how you can, when necessary, work around it. If you embrace it, then it's going to be that much easier for you. And you will even discover that there are new types of skills that we can be teaching as well, right? That AI is not just a dead end, even from the perspective of it being used to do the work. There's still a skill in how you use it to do the work.
Oh, that's a great point and great advice. Listen, Dr. Fennell, thank you so much for your insight today on AI in education, from the dissertation proofreader to how students can use AI in enhancing their own learning. Your work is definitely helping teachers and students navigate the evolving landscape with innovation and responsibility. I'm sure both of us were on the same page here. Can't wait to see what's next. So before we go, just tell everyone where they can go to find out more, maybe about you and some of the work that you're doing.
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me at my website, elifennell.com. You can find me, if you're on these, you can find me at ResearchGate or academia.edu, and on LinkedIn. You can connect to me on LinkedIn as well.
Well, listen, for those of you who have been listening today, thank you for tuning in, and make sure that you share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflection that you've had, and tag us on X at Class Dynamics or Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. You can also find out all of our links, including information about our sponsors, on our link tree at Classroom Dynamics. We always look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you've learned. More importantly, share this episode with someone, a colleague, a friend, a teacher, even a parent who you feel can benefit from today's show. You can also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Dr. Eli Fennell of Albizu University in Miami for joining us today on Classroom Dynamics. Thank you for being with us, the time, the insight, all of it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Classroom Dynamics. I hope today's conversation sparked something meaningful for you, maybe a new idea, a fresh perspective, or just a little boost of motivation to take back to your classroom. Remember, it's never too late to strengthen your craft, and if there's ever a moment to re-energize your work, why not make it today? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. Follow us on X at Class Dynamics and on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. If you haven't already, go to your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep that spark alive and never underestimate the incredible impact you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think. Did you miss our episode with co-authors Annie Brock and Heather Hundley of the Growth Mindset Coach 2nd Edition? If so, this is a must-have resource that has become a trusted guide for educators committed to developing resilient, curious, and motivated learners.
You know, whether it's for yourself and you're setting it up for your students, like what are some things that you've potentially have overcome? What were the challenges that you maybe set some goals around, tried really hard, persevered, showed some resilience, maybe didn't make it to the very end of what you were hoping to accomplish, but along the way, what were the things that you did accomplish? And as Carol Dweck mentions the famous word of yet. So you don't have it yet doesn't mean you're not going to get it, but I think working towards that is essential.